Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to the community live stream. My name is Chuck Tomasi, Senior Developer Evangelist at ServiceNow, and I am here with another episode of the community live stream. Today is August 20th, 2020, and our topic today is Flow Designer Basics. And I appreciate you joining me. Just doing a quick double check to make sure everything is looking good. Hey, we've got audio, we've got video, we've got streaming. I wasn't sure what was going to happen because there were all kinds of variables that were going on just moments before the show. And you know me, one-man show, anything can happen. So thank you very much for joining me. This is the show that brings you the insights, the reverse engineering, the journey of discovery that is based on the ServiceNow community content and the questions you bring to me. So thank you very much for that. We've got lots of great content coming up today and in the upcoming days and weeks. Join me every Monday and Thursday at 2 p.m. UTC. That's 7 a.m. Mountain Time. Well, no, I'm sorry, 7 a.m. Pacific. Arizona is one of those places in Mountain that doesn't change its clock. So weird bit of trivia for you. That would be 10 a.m. Eastern as we go through these March to November daylight saving time. What would that be? 3 p.m. in London, 4 p.m. in Berlin. I think that's CEST. 5 p.m. in Moscow, 6 p.m. in Dubai, 7:30 p.m. in India. You get the idea. So join us when you can. Do the math. 2 p.m. UTC. And then you can adjust from your time zone there. Thank you again for joining me. This is, let's go through our pre-roll. This is broadcast on YouTube. So if you're doing the YouTube thing, thank you very much for joining me. We have a boatload of people out there. We're gonna have to get a bigger boat, to quote Jaws. Those of you that remember the movie. Click like, subscribe, helpful link, all that stuff that you normally do, because that's what you do on YouTube, right? And thank you very much to the people who have added this channel as a subscription. There is lots more wonderful content coming out than what I just put out. If you click the notification, you get the little subscription thing that says, hey, we are live, it's happening now. So thank you for that. I'm going to make sure my phone is off so I don't drain the battery by the end of the show. We also do this on Twitch as a backup plan if you're watching there. I do try to keep an eye on the rolling comments as we go through the show. There's sometimes a lot of people here, and it's hard to keep an eye on that conversation. It takes on a life of its own, and people are talking amongst themselves. That's fine. That's wonderful. That's part of the community. And I often look there if I get stuck and say, never thought of that. Or somebody sends in a discussion. It's a wonderful time. Can't keep an eye on Twitch, though. I'm going to work on that. I'm trying to find a way to get a chat aggregator for those two. If I find that, I'll let you know. Until then, good morning to everybody who's joining in. Lots of familiar names. Thank you for joining. Lots of new names that haven't checked in. So we do that. As I mentioned, this is based on the community. If you haven't done so, please ask your questions in the community. Pose your questions, your problems. There are various sub-communities. I invite you to look there. Make sure your content is in the right sub-forum so that you get the right target audience to answer your question. That way you're asking performance analytics and reporting questions in the right place. And developers may not know everything there is to know about reporting. You might get lucky, but maybe not. Or GRC or SecOps or ITSM or whatever it happens to be. There's probably a forum for it. So check there first. Also remember to search for a similar question before posting. I've seen a lot of questions in the past that were just repeats of others. So play fair, be nice, and everybody wins on the community at community.servicenow.com. This episode, as I mentioned, is on Flow Designer Basics. So if you've got questions that go beyond Flow Designer Basics, boom, that's the place to put them, is on the community at community.servicenow.com. Also invite you to go over to developer.servicenow.com, get yourself a free personal developer instance, and check out the API. Start playing around with Paris. The Paris release is not generally available yet, but you can check it out on the developer instances over at developer.servicenow.com. I should probably throw in the desk bell when I mention that. Gotta have fun. Throw in the sound effects. Very good morning to everybody who's joining me. Still seeing people coming in on the community. That's part of this pre-roll, right? To give you a chance to, oh, my phone announcement went off. I better check out what Chuck's talking about. So I don't start the content right at the top for that very reason. Give everybody a chance to get in here. And also, remind you of a number of things. Like Meetups, we've got 3 Meetups next week for Minneapolis, Pittsburgh, and was it Utah? Let me check. 25, 26, 27. I was just looking at this calendar yesterday, and I'm trying to remember. Utah is on the 9th, pardon me. 26th is Minneapolis. 25th is Tampa Bay. And many of these are happening during work hours, so you don't have to take time away from the family. Just ask your boss for permission to say, hey, I would like to... Why is my scrolling not working quite right? Oh, I got it. All right. Join the many people in your time zone and maybe outside your time zone. I'm not in Tampa Bay, but I will try to make it. I may have a commitment that time, but I will try to make all of them that I can that are within reasonable time zones. People still check it in. Good, good, good. Love to see it. That's over at meetup.com/pro/ServiceNow dev program. Also, just another quick reminder, if you've built applications and you'd like to help out the COVID situation, please go over to bit.ly/tell-us-about-your-app and register. Just fill out the quick questionnaire. Takes only a couple of minutes, and we will donate $50 for each app, up to 5 apps that you let us know about. And you win, we win, people with COVID win, because this doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon. This is August, and we're hearing some pretty grim forecasts. So again, people, be safe, do the smart thing, social distancing, wear a mask, and let us know what apps you're building. It doesn't have to be a COVID app, by the way. You could be building an app to track murder hornets. Something else that's very cheerful right now. Whatever it happens to be. It could be in operations. It could be in sales. It could be in IT. Just a lot of great innovation happening out there, and we'd like to hear about it and pay back the community a little bit for it. The Breakpoint Podcast had another new release yesterday. If you haven't picked that up, go check it out. Dave Slusher and I are talking about the new features in Paris, mainly around Flow Designer and Integration Hub. Very exciting stuff. We look forward to sharing that with you. If you haven't done so already, go over to bit.ly/sn-break-point, and you can find all the different ways you can subscribe. There's also now a Breakpoint page on the community. So as new episodes are added, that page will automatically be updated. So you can listen on the community. You can listen on your mobile device. You can listen on your desktop by going to that URL and just hitting play on the playlist. There's a number of different ways, and we have a bonus episode. This is supposed to be every other Wednesday, but it just seems like there's way too much to talk about, and I might have to back that up to every Wednesday, but I didn't want to put myself under that kind of workload. So I am promising you every other Wednesday, and I will hopefully get some bonus ones in there like we have coming out on the 26th. And that inspired ideas for even more content. So look forward to seeing you there and talking to you. Just some open conversations, audio only. So no PowerPoints, no demos, no update sets. You just sit back and listen to a couple of friends chatting. And it's a good time. Our next Tech Now episode is coming up real quick, September 15th. Seems like we just did one. Well, we did just do one on Tuesday about building Now Experience components with Wolf. And now we've got Jivanjot coming in to tell us about the Upgrade Center and all the wonderful things to simplify your next upgrade. So Paris makes it so easy. We're really focusing on getting people the maximum value out of their platform by getting to the latest release sooner. There's no sense waiting a whole year to do your upgrade and go, well, I think I'm going to skip Orlando and go to Paris. I think I'm going to skip Paris and wait for Quebec. No, you don't have to skip anymore if the upgrade cycle is shorter. Get that value, pay for those features that you paid for, register over at bit.ly/TN79Reg. I try to keep this simple. I try to keep this consistent. You can go there and find out more. We're going to skip the stuff on coding because there is no code today, and we're going to get right into our example. So Flow Designer basics. Let me tell you a little bit about Flow Designer before we get going. This episode is really targeted towards a couple of major personas. One, people who are new to the platform and just learning the basics of workflow. How do I automate my process? How do I get an approval? How do I check these records every night on a scheduled basis? Flow Designer is great for those. The other one is for those veterans. It's obviously for lots of other people, but the veterans of the platform, like me, who have been around since time immemorial. You remember practically when ServiceNow was a command line thing. Okay, it never was a command line thing, but pretty darn close. We didn't have graphical workflow way back when, but The veterans who normally reach for a business rule or a scheduled job or write some script to do a special thing, this is for you. I know I've heard some people say, you know, I one of these days I need to check out Flow Designer. I'm here to help you exercise that muscle, okay? When I was, just a quick analogy about home projects, I never tiled a bathroom before, but once somebody shows you how, it's pretty easy. And this is kind of how Flow Designer is. I'm here to show you how to build a couple of simple flows and you take it and run from there. It's a wonderful thing. So if you're one of those people, then please join me. If you're not, well, if you're already familiar with Flow Designer, I encourage you, contribute. Let me know if I'm saying something incorrectly, because that happens all the time. You might catch me on something or contribute something in the chat. All right. Yeah, Steve mentioned that Breakpoint can also be found in Spotify. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. I've got it submitted to Amazon. It's all over the place, wherever you find your favorite podcast. That was just sort of a central place to go and go, oh, look, there's a whole bunch of links. TuneIn, Stitcher. Yeah, it's all over the place. Okay, so what is Flow Designer? Probably should have started with that. Flow Designer, I'm going to read this right from the definition that's on the docs page at docs.servicenow.com. Flow Designer is a Now platform feature for automating processes in a single design environment. Okay, keep that in mind. Flow Designer lets process owners use natural language to automate approvals, tasks, notifications, and record operations without coding. Okay? Flow Designer, no coding. There's an option where you can code, but you don't have to. You can build custom actions that may use code, but you don't have to. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, in many cases, you can and should use Flow Designer. This is the part that I'm retraining my brain on, because I've been using the platform for so long that I kind of get in this mode of, oh, I want to do this, that's a business rule. Oh, I want to do that, that's a scheduled job. No. Got to retrain those muscles. Instead of business rules, Flow Designer. Instead of scheduled jobs, Flow Designer. Instead of incoming email actions, inbound email actions, where you're scripting and doing things with records, Flow Designer. Catalog item workflows, Flow Designer. Okay? Instead of legacy workflows, Flow Designer. I know it sounds like the wonder tool that slices, dices, and makes thousands and thousands of julienne fries. Okay, that was a throwback to an old commercial in the 1970s, but yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, in this case, I'll show you some of the use cases where we will employ that and do those things very quickly. I myself have been challenged to take some of my scripts from business rules and script includes and whatnot and put them into Flow Designer, and I've been thoroughly amazed at the outcomes of those challenges. In one case, I had, what was it, about a 300-line script include called from a couple of business rules, and Jason McKee, my teammate, said, now, can you do that in Flow Designer? It'll make for a better demo. Not only did it make for a better demo, but what took me about 3 hours to write in script and about an hour to debug, took me less than an hour to implement in Flow Designer, including debug, including one custom action. Okay, that was a light bulb moment for me a couple of years ago. I went, wow. Okay, that was the turning point where I said, it's my go-to workflow process automation tool now. Okay? Flow Designer also makes more sense. For those of you that have used the legacy workflow tool, you often find that you say, hey, here's my change process, and it's monolithic. It goes from start to end, and it manages every state and every approval and every piece of that interaction for the life cycle of a change request. Okay? Try not to think of Flow Designer in that capacity. Think of it as discrete pieces. In fact, later in my, as I was using workflow, the legacy workflow, I was breaking it down into smaller pieces, saying, you know, this part's just going to handle the approval, and they'll have a UI action to manage the state or something of that nature, because it was very hard to build and debug and test and maintain big monolithic workflows. Think of workflow more like somewhere between, think of Flow Designer, somewhere between workflow and business rules. Okay? Business rules, small, little, get in, get out, do a specific thing, triggered on an action, very much like Flow Designer. Workflow, big, monolithic, handles end-to-end. Okay, hard to build, hard to maintain. Flow Designer, easy to build, easy to maintain, easy to test, and It works as a reusable component. Not going to show that to you today. That's part of the Flow API, and I believe I did a video on that recently. If not, I will look in my reference and get that to you shortly. But you can reuse these components. Either it's a flow or as a subflow or trigger an action. Very powerful stuff. So think of them as little discrete pieces of logic. I want to trigger an approval, and if the approval is approved, I take an action and it's done. You may trigger that flow several times, which is very nice. Again, kind of like a subroutine. So before I move on, another question in a lot of people's minds is, what happens to legacy workflow? Is it going away? The answer is no. We will continue to support it. You can continue to build. You can continue to maintain. I strongly recommend building new workflows in Flow Designer. Any new logic you've got to add on, build it in Flow Designer. The two can cohabitate. In fact, you can call a legacy workflow from Flow Designer if you want to take advantage of that investment. But anything new that you're building, really think about building that out in Flow Designer for the speed and the testing and the reusability capabilities. Okay? You'll thank yourself later. So if you're one of these legacy programmers who goes, wow, I've done everything in workflow up to date, good for you. Keep that there. We'll continue to support it. It's not going away. It's not getting any new investments. We're not putting a whole lot of R&D into it unless there's a severe bug that we go, wow, that was totally broken for the last 6 years. We better fix that. Okay, I think most of those have been shaken out because that product's been around for 12 years. But Flow Designer is really where we're going to be investing a lot of the new capabilities. So let me start by bringing up Flow Designer. Get the right pointing device. That happens. I'm dealing with 2 keyboards, a trackpad, and a mouse, and 4 screens. So it's a little messy on this end, but hopefully you get this. What is the execution order of Flow Designer if I'm running it in the background, and how can I set the order? Flow Designer's execution order, typically you wouldn't have multiple flows triggering on the same trigger. Okay, if you are, you might want to look at making subflows. So good question. Let's go to Flow Designer and let's create a new flow. My use case for this is going to be, you've probably seen this on previous episodes, I've got CLS courses and I've got tasks underneath each one of those. So let me go to the data model real quick. Again, wrong pointer device. Go to Employee CLS, and I have courses, and each course has one or more related tasks to it. Okay, so I can create a task under here, and the task has an active flag, and the task has a state. Okay, much like you would see with change or incident. I'm just using courses as a generic model. Now, when a course is deactivated, somebody says, I want to take a parent record and mark it closed. So let's take the CS210 course and say, your state is now declined or inactive. We'll change it to inactive. When we turn off that active flag, I want to take all active tasks under a record and deactivate them, much like you would do if you were canceling a change request or a problem ticket or an incident or somebody checked out a laptop. If you cancel that, let's cancel everything else after that. So we will go do that. It's a pretty simple flow. And again, this is Flow Designer Basics. So I bring up Flow Designer, and under Paris, it has moved. It used to be a menu option called Flow Designer. It is now under Process Automation because we also have some new capabilities under there that I'm not going to get into today, but we have Flow Designer under Process Automation. Let's go to this menu over here on the far right and say, I would like a new flow. We'll get into subflows and actions and data streams later. But a basic flow has 2 parts, an action and a trigger. We will give this a name, close course tasks on active equals false. Okay. Assign it the scope, just like any other artifact, which are normally automatically assigned based on the scope you choose in Studio or the application picker. This one allows you to choose it as you're creating it. Protection is for my benefit as an author, How do I want to make this available? Should I share it with somebody else? I'm not going to worry about that. A nice description would be good. When the course closes, e.g. active equals false, then, boop, hit command space somehow. Then close all active child tasks. Okay. Many of you are thinking, I could do that in about 5 lines of script. Great. But poor administrator who doesn't know JavaScript years from now is going to look at this and go, oh, it's script. Let's make management and maintenance easier on these things. I can run it as either the person who initiates this session. So if Chuck is sitting in front of the keyboard and happens to close a record, this flow will run as me with any entitlements, roles that I've been given. Or I could run it as a system user and say, forget the ACLs, blow through those, and just do it. If I choose that, this other box appears or disappears. So I could say, look, I know Chuck may not have the right roles to do these record operations because maybe the task table requires a CLS course admin, and Chuck doesn't normally have that. I can go look up some of these roles, x_66238, CLS323, and say, all right, there, you need this role to do these operations because the table has those ACLs. I can temporarily entitle somebody to that role. This, as far as I know, I'm 95% sure about this, but please check with your account team. This does not count against your licensing. There's no additional cost to give temporary entitlement. I would not recommend going through and putting admin on everybody's role because you could run into security on everybody's flow because you could run into security issues. This is a great way to say, you know, normally I would have to grant users this role and I'd be charged for that, and they run this flow twice a year for, you know, quarter end or closeout or one of these infrequent tasks. You don't have to do that now. You can be a little more responsible with your licensing. So I like this feature. For now, I'm going to keep it simple and just say run as system user. I know I've got admin role on this thing anyway. Now we're brought to the Flow Designer canvas. That message that popped up behind me says, hooray, you've created a flow. Good for you. Okay, this is the name of my flow, and I can change it at any time simply by clicking up here, as I can do with actions and subflows. I've got some properties that brings me back to my original properties, should I want to change any of those. And I start with the trigger. When would I like this to start? Just like a business rule, it has a trigger based on record was updated, record was inserted. Well, I've got a lot of choices here. I could do some record operations. I could also run this as a scheduled job every 3 hours, every night at 6 a.m. Whatever it happens to be, I could run it from inbound email, service catalog tasks, and watch for more appearing here in future releases. So this is continuing to grow. In my case, I'm going to do it when a record is updated. Then, much like business rules, UI policies, many other things, I pick a record, which would be my course table, and I can add additional filters. I don't want this to run for every update. That would be inefficient, and it would also be inaccurate. I want it to run whenever active changes to false. Pretty simple stuff. We've done this before. Again, no scripting, very easy to do. Can it be used for scheduled jobs also? Short answer, Anupam, yes. That would be a trigger based on a date here. Very easy to do. Is there a way to bypass Flow Designer flows similar to set workflow false? Shane, good question. Set workflow false on a glide record disables business rules, workflows, and flows. So be very careful with that. You may be turning off more than you like. Same kind of thing when you run an import and have that checkbox that says run business rules. That's doing a set workflow false. It will turn off flows. There may be times when you want to do that, and then there are maybe times when you don't. I also say, when would I like to run this? I could run it once, one and done. Okay, this is kind of that situation. You're not going to close this thing every time. I could run it for each unique change. Go check the docs on the wording on this. I believe I've got this right, but a unique change would be, say, setting the order from 100 to 200, then back to 100 is not a unique change. Okay, It will do the 100 to 200, but when you change it back to 100, it goes, been there, done that, we're not going to run the flow this time. That's where you would want for every update. So there are some subtle differences in when you run this. And if you've got a process that's running, say, for 2 hours, and you try to run it every hour, this is a good time to say, only if not currently running. Okay, I only want to run this flow if it's not currently engaged. Maybe there's an approval that's been sitting out there waiting. You don't want to fire off another approval. Okay, that's a good time to do that. There are some other advanced options under here. I don't want to go through those because this is Flow Designer Basics. So I've got a basic trigger. I'm going to run this because I'm going to test it a couple of times. Let's run it for every update just for this example. Normally this feels more like a run once thing. Spells out what it is, course updated where active change equals false. Great stuff, easy to read. If you can't remember, there's an annotation over here in the little speech box. And you can say, when active changes to false, run this flow. Okay? You do what you want to do. It's pretty fun stuff. I made a change, so I would like to save early, save often. That's the trigger. That tells the system when it's time to engage. Also notice this is not active yet. It's grayed out here, but I have a box that says activate. It's not active yet. I don't have anything to run. Now I pick actions, and I've got 3 choices. I can pick discrete actions that do something like update a record, send an email, log a message, send a Slack message, that kind of thing. I also have the ability to run some flow logic, check a condition. If this value is greater than 10, run a loop. Hey, to see all those records I just did a lookup on, let's go through each one with a for each loop. Let's make a decision. Let's branch and join, and a lot of stuff under here, and subflows, which is like a flow, but it's a small discrete component that I can call over and over in multiple flows. I've gravitated towards doing more subflows. I believe I just did an episode on that, so look for that as well. I'm kind of jumping all around in these topics, and I'm trying to do a reset in my head to say, let's start with the basics. So this is one of those basics episodes. So first action I wanted to do in my requirement, when the course changes to inactive, I want to go get all the child tasks. How do we do that? Well, there is a ServiceNow core action called lookup records. This is effectively doing a glide record query for all you script heads. And I tell it what table. This is going to be on the task table, but there are a bazillion task tables. So I'm going to say x66238, CLS 323 to kind of narrow it down a little bit better. And there is my community live stream task table. I can set conditions so I don't get all of the records. Well, if it's already closed, I don't care. So let's get the ones where active is true. I can order it. I don't necessarily need an order. They're not coming back in any special order. And the maximum results, how many maximum could I take? 1,000 sounds good. I hope I don't have a course with more than 1,000 records. That goes and fetches me all these records. Now, sidebar, literally, is over here called the data panel. It has been building things out. When I set my trigger, it gave me a course record because I said I need a course record. It can also tell me what fields have changed under this data structure. These are called data pills. So I can easily, very easily, and quickly navigate through various attributes and records and data that is part of this process. When I did my lookup records, I put my fat head away here so you can see that. I've got a task record, I know what table it was from, and I know how many records were retrieved for me. So the data panel will continue to grow, and I will use that in future parts of my flow, like now. Okay. Now, once I've got all the records looked up, let's go to the flow logic and say for each. It says for each what? Well, remember that list of task records? I simply drag that over, drop it there. Okay. Option 2. If I was wrong, I click X. Option 2 is I use this icon called the data pill picker, and I can navigate, and this lines up with these major blocks over here on the data panel. I've got the trigger record. Nope, don't want that. I got lookup records. Yes, I want that. And I want the task records. Does the same thing. When do I use each? Well, if it's on the top level or one click down, I'll usually use the data panel on the right. If it's deeper than that, then I use the data pill picker because I can type ahead and find that. We had a nice discussion with Jake Berman, who leads this product, on Live Coding Happy Hour last Friday. He gave us some insights, some really cool things that are coming. So look for more ease of use things coming with data pill picker and flow designer in general. All right, that's my for each loop. Now notice that it made a branch. For every record that goes down here, it's going to run whatever is in this little side branch, kind of like indented. If I put another action here, it won't happen until the for each is done. So for each what? Well, for each task record and the data panel, let me get out of the way again, maybe I should just stay out of the way. The data panel has put a task record underneath the for each, so I can work on just that record. Okay. Let's take that and do an action. So for every active record, oh, I missed part of the query. Shame on me. It would have closed all active task records. That would have been bad. I need another condition on here, and I say, and course is course record. Yeah, I better get the ones that are just related to this current course. Otherwise, I would have closed them all. Bad me. Sometimes you find things like that in testing. Why did all my tasks close? Even worse is it looks good in test. You look at one record, you go, yep, those closed. Then you get into production and people go, why did you close my tasks? They're not supposed to be. So this is a better filter than what I just had. Doesn't impact what I've done below the flow because I didn't change any data pills. Let's do an update record. And if you can't find what you're looking for in here, just start typing it. Update record. And I've got create or update. Well, the task would already have been created, so I don't need that. Update multiple records. Ooh, that might be fun. I wonder if I could use that instead of the for each. Hey, let's try that. Normally I would have gone like this and put an update underneath the for each. And I'll show you this plan. I haven't tried the other way yet, but it's an idea. Then I would take my task record, drag it there. It already figures out what table it's from. I'm going to set the active field to true or to false just by leaving it unchecked. And the state field we can put in as canceled. Yay. Okay, that's a pretty straightforward way to do it. Notice that the update task doesn't tell you a whole lot of details. I strongly urge you to add an annotation to your updates or inserts or whatever. So set active equals false and state equals canceled. That helps you later to go, wait a minute, I've got 14 update task records. What is doing what? Very helpful. Let's try this. That's really it. I've just finished my whole requirement and I was talking a lot. Are there ever situations where you need to save to refresh and update your data panel? I've seen that in previous releases, haven't seen it too much in Paris. Yeah, sometimes you go to pick something and it's grayed out. Well, that's weird. So I save. Sometimes it even requires a browser refresh. Again, I haven't seen it too much in Paris, but Paris has only been out for a few weeks and I've only built a couple of flows. So we'll see how it goes. There's my flow is pretty much done. I've got a lovely test button up here and I test it. The test button skips the trigger, so I don't have to change a course from active to inactive. But what I do need to find is a course that has some tasks. So let me go down here to tasks, and it looks like Fleen has a few. 1, 2, that'll work. Fleen has some stuff. So let's pick Fleen as our course. I can optionally put in and say, well, yeah, I really changed the active state. In case I'm using that in my logic later, which I may, I can change the active, I can change the state. I can set in those fields and say, here's the field name, here's what the value was. Impersonate that trigger, in effect. But I don't need that right now. I've also got the ability to run this in the background. If I were running, say, a REST API through Integration Hub, that takes 15 minutes. And trust me, I've got some that run that long. I don't want to sit around and wait here and go, is it working? Is it working? I don't know. I can't even check the logs because my one and only thread is being consumed by me. So run it in the background, and then I can keep an eye on the logs. I can keep an eye on the records that are coming in, going out, recognize any problems, and cancel it if I need to. This one's pretty short and tight, so I'm going to run this in the foreground. I run it, and I get this message up here. The flow has been executed. To view the flow details, click here. Very useful stuff for debugging and testing your flows. This is called the execution details. And what you've got is, here's the trigger, and it assumes, because this was a test, it assumes that the trigger happened. But even more interesting down here is the actions. All right? So I said, go and look up records where active is true and the course is trigger course record. And it said, I returned 0. Okay, you see that? Runtime value for count is 0. That's not good. Okay. We should be having 2. Well, maybe it's a data issue. Look, I happened to pick ones that were already inactive. Oops. Okay, or they already changed. Which one was it? I may have run this test before. Let's turn these both to active and not canceled. This is probably while I was building this out and testing it. And make these work in progress. Make these active. Test with good data and test with broken data. I did those in reverse order. Close this and just hit run test again. That easy. I don't have to put in breakpoints and script debugger and all kinds of other things. Oh, look here. I can already tell I'm having a better day because right here it says 1 of 2. When I did the lookup records, I've got a value of 2. Awesome. And it says here are the 2 records you had, Fleen DNA and Fleen Overview. Sounds like the right ones. And for each record, I can see what was updated. Okay. There's number 1, and if I click 2, I see, well, look right above my head, right here. You can see the sysid changing when I go from record 1 to record 2. So you can step through that for loop, find out exactly what it did, when it did it, how many times it did it, where it may have run into problems. Very, very useful stuff on the execution details. So check that out. Chuck, your tasks have been active equals false before. Yes. Dirk, you are absolutely correct. That was the issue. If you've got an async business rule on update and also a flow background for update, what will run first? I give up. What? I honestly don't know right now. Async is kind of a mystery black box. Obviously, you can put an order on business rules. Be very careful. Don't assume what you think is going to run first will run first. So I'm sure there's an order in there between which. I know that flows run before inbound email actions. So if you're processing email in both or either, flows will run first. So that one I do know. At least that's the way it was when it came out in New York, Orlando. Can't remember. All right, let's take another use case while we still have a few minutes left. And my second use case is going to be more of a scheduled job use case scenario. So every night I want to check for overdue approvals and send a notification. Let's say they've been sitting around for a week. I think I did this on a similar episode recently about approval reminders, but I'm going to do it again here just because it makes for a more complete use case. Oh, almost forgot. Need to click activate. This is sort of in a draft state. It's not really going to run. It's going to be on the drawing room board. And you can test all you want, but it's not going to run until you hit activate. And that's what publishes the workflow to make the system recognize to run the trigger. It goes, now I can pay attention. I could deactivate it later. If I make further changes, I will need to save and activate that new version. So we can do that. There is a menu over on the side that allows me a few different things for configurations. I won't get into those too deeply today, but lots of stuff to check out on here. I just covered the basics. Let's get back to our other one of doing a nightly flow. I could either go back to home and click new, flow. Or if you notice when I'm in here, there's a plus sign that pops up and I can do new flow there. Just a little easier way of saying, hey, I've got all my flows. I've got 15 tabs open. Let's go create a new one. So let's call this approval reminders. Spell it. Reminders. Part of the CLS app. Send a reminder for all approvals requested greater than 7 days ago. How's that? Works for me. Let's run it as system because it is going across different approvals, across different records. It may need some information that it needs. The trigger on this one is going to be daily, and I can specify what time each day, or I could say run it at a specific time. Okay, run once, run multiple. There's lots of different things in here. So I'll say every day at 8 a.m. because that's when people come into the office and check their mail. Or if you're weird like me, you check the mail before you really get to work. It's already got my trigger in here, so I know what the run start time is. That will change each time this is a run. And my action is going to be another lookup records. So I don't remember where it was. I'm just going to type up look up records. The plural one, not the singular one. This is going to come out of the approver table, which is sysapproval _ approver, where state is requested. And I'm typing this as fast as I can say it practically. Created is at or before 1 week ago, 7 days ago. Let's just do last week. Okay. You can get that figured out. Do I need any additional filters? Probably not. If I wanted to, I could order these by class or something clever. Do that. There's my lovely lookup, just like before. I didn't try the update multiples. Oh, let's do that after we're done with this. Okay, we'll do that as a stretch goal. Try the update multiple records. This time, I'm going to do a for each on the approval records. And for each one, I'm going to send an email. Okay, not really much exciting stuff going on in here, is there? The target record will be the approval record. And I can send this to, this is where you need to be a little careful because for each approval record, there's an approver, but if I pick that, the value in there is going to be a sysid. So I need to drill through the approver to the user record and get the email address explicitly. It doesn't do this like throwing somebody into the sender field or who's it going to when you're doing a notification. So you have to be explicit on the email. Learn that the hard way. Okay, approval greater than 7 days. You can do that. Hey, go approve something. Going to keep this mail very simple, and you can see what happens. I'll save it, and I'll test it. Run it in the background, and I believe I have several old change requests on this instance that need updating. It's running for a scary long time. That's either really good or really bad. Let's go look. How many did it get? 316. Wow, that's annoying. But now those people have email. And if I go through the first one, you can see here's my subject, here's the body, here's who it went to, Luke Wilson. Obviously, I want to put some other details in there, but I've got what I need out of this message. And if I go to message record 2, 3, 4, okay, all that stuff is changing accordingly. I've got all those emails going out. Again, I would want to activate that to make it run every day at 8 a.m. Very easy to do. Now, back to our stretch goal since we have a couple of minutes left. Instead of a for each, we did our lookup. Let's take this out. And if I take the for each out, it's also going to take out any underlying actions. So it's all gone. Let's try this because this is new in Paris. I haven't tried this yet. update. I thought it was just an action step, but there's actually an action for it. Update multiple records on the, what was it? The task table. Oh, bummer. CLS 323 task. All these conditions must be met. You know what? I'd like to read what that says. So action, update. Do you specify the condition? Update multiple records on a ServiceNow table. You can configure the conditions for those records to be updated. Server-side validation rules are enforced. Data policy, business rules, dictionary define mandatory field. But UI policy does not apply. Okay, so if you say a field is mandatory with a UI policy, it's not going to bark at you here. I may not need this. This might just be a one action. Oh, this would be really cool if this worked. Okay, it was active is true and course is course record. Now I'm going to set the active field to false and the state field to canceled. This could be a big time saver. And the other thing I want to know is, do I get any information out of those records? I get a count. Behind my head again. I get a count, a status, and an error message should something not work, like a data policy gets in the way. Okay. Order by, don't need it ordered by anything. I really want to test this. This is fun. This is how we learn, kids. And if I look at other tasks in this list that are active, let's go get something from Garay. I don't know. I made that word up and I don't even know how to pronounce it. So let's test this on that one. How many did it get and how many did it update? The for each gives you the visibility into that. I don't know what this will show us. It doesn't give you all the records. It just says, I updated 2. Okay, but I can't, and theoretically, they've been updated to false canceled. Let's update that. And they have. How about that? Show matching shows me 3. I did say 2. Oh, because 1 was probably already closed. Yeah. But these 2 were closed. This was closed. It was already false. So I know my condition worked perfectly. I had 3 records, but only 2 met that condition. Woohoo! All right, that's a time saver. Not as clear for debugging on exactly what happened, but update multiple. Wow, that's awesome. I like that action. Look how simple that flow has just become. Think about doing that in a script. You could probably get away with 2, maybe 3 lines of script in a business rule. But still, this is easier to see, easier to test, easier to debug. And if you have to come along later and make changes, well, now your old flows that are still running with the old logic will continue to run that way. Can Flow Designer be used in place of a data policy? No. Not its purpose. Data policy is like a UI policy for doing conditional form things, but it does it on the server side. So it enforces things like mandatory fields. In fact, a lot of times when you are going through, I think it's Guided Application Developer, and you say, this field is mandatory, it's creating a data policy rather than a dictionary item. So totally different use cases for those. Flow Designer is for processing the logic typically off of a data trigger. Great question, by the way. A record has been changed, a record has been created, a record has been deleted, a scheduled time has come around, an inbound action has happened. Data policies are reacting to changes on the form in real time as they happen. So much like a UI policy, it's the server equivalent of a UI policy. Using Flow Designer, can I move data, view incident/change records from one instance to the other instance? Yes, with the help of Integration Hub. You would do that through either a REST API, or if you're really interested in moving data between there, look at potentially instance data replication. A very handy way to keep data in sync, even based on very specific conditions. So I only want my open actions sent to this other instance, something like that. I use it to keep my dev instance data up to date with prod data, because every night, every day, something's happening in prod on certain tables. Not all tables, because it's not a replacement for cloning. Can you please show one example of an inbound action in Flow Designer? I can get you started, but I don't think we're going to have time to do a whole one. I haven't thought about a use case for this yet. But let's create a new flow. Process course email on this. I'll skip the rest for now. The trigger would look like inbound email, and I can set the condition to say perhaps subject starts with course. You may be getting, email is the poorest of the poor man's integrations. Okay, I'm going to preface it with that. Now, if it's a reply to record, I could say watch for these and update records on this other table. But for now, I'm just going to create a new, that's the difference between like the reply to and the new in an inbound email action. If I do that, then I could go ahead and create a record. Or I could create or update a record. Create a record, and notice the data pills I've got over here. I've got access to a lot of stuff in my email record, including CC and BCC and the state and the target table, all kinds of wonderful information I can drill into the user that's referenced. So it's going to do a lot of these lookups by itself. It will not copy the attachments automatically. Inbound email action scripts do this implicitly. We specifically detached that as an action. So I would create the record, and then another action would be, I could get the email header in case there was something in the header that I needed. Okay, lots of actions around this stuff. But I would also do look up email attachments, and then I could tell it how to dispatch these. I could attach them to the email or the course record. I could attach them to nothing. I could throw them away. So you could definitely do that. It will ask you which email record. I want to use that record. Easy to do stuff. Lots of email options, but as opposed to inbound actions that do a lot of these things implicitly, you may have to add these actions on because there may be times when you just want to receive an email and say, ignore attachments. I don't use those. Or if the attachment is important, I could even perhaps start an integration and process that as part of that action. So very powerful things. And again, I've done inbound email action scripts. They kind of get a little loopy sometimes. This is pretty straightforward. When is it recommended to use Flow instead of normal workflow? Now. That's my recommendation. Use workflow if you're maintaining older things that were built in workflow, but please don't start new things in the legacy workflow. You're only limiting your options as you go forward. You're going to hit some situations where it's not going to make sense, or there's a capability that you don't have that you'll need, and you may be choosing to make a custom activity in workflow. At this point forward, net new work should be done in Flow Designer when it involves something you would have normally done in workflow, business rules, scheduled jobs. So that's my recommendation for now. Let me just wrap up with, again, for people new to the platform, Flow Designer makes it very easy to automate your workflow logic of your process. For you veterans, okay, raising my hand high on that one, retrain your muscle memory to stop writing scripted business rules, legacy workflows, scripted scheduled jobs, that kind of thing. Inbound email actions, start writing them in Flow. And also, for you veterans, think of flows and subflows as modular. Okay? Get in, do your thing, get out. If I write an approval, the approval handles just the approval piece. It doesn't worry about what's happening later on in the process and downstream. It's not monolithic like the legacy workflow. It doesn't go end to end on the life cycle of that record. It's doing certain things at certain times and may even be run multiple times. So, it almost makes rollback kind of not important anymore. That is all for today. Please join me on Monday, the 24th, when I take one of your suggestions. Somebody sent this to me, and it came up in a previous episode about approval summarizers. That little section of the form that says, hey, you're approving. here's what you're approving and how to display that. I'll show you a couple tricks that may be new to you, maybe not, maybe you knew it, maybe you've got a couple tricks to share with me, but join me on Monday the 24th for Approval Summarizers, and I look forward to seeing you then. Until then, where's the music? That's it. I'll see you later. Take care. Bye.